Hi, so my name is Arian Radmand. I am the founder and CEO at IgnitePOST.com. And what we do is we are a service that helps sales and marketing teams boost their conversion rates through the use of robotically handwritten, real pen and ink notes at massive scale. So think of us kind of like a MailChimp for handwritten notes.
All right, you know what the funny thing is? All right, for all the years that I've known you, I've always just said your name wrong. Like for
Oh,
all
really?
the years, like I've known you now for I think what? Let's see, probably 9 years. You were like Mass Challenge year 1 or year 2? What year were you at Mass Challenge?
I think that was in 2012, if I'm
2012. All right, so I've known you for 8 years.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, every single time I'm like, I want to say Adrian. I want to say Adrian. Like every single time I look at your name, I just want to say it, but I'm like, I go, and I know it, but every single time I just want to say Adrian. In my mind, you just like,
you know what? I've been called so many different names that I literally answer to almost anything now, so it's okay.
Hello, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so very welcome. Good lighting. I like that. I like it when people ask, like, good lighting right where you are. So I always ask everyone, before we talk about the company, before we talk about your education, we want to talk about you, because like everyone needs to understand who you are well before the creation. So let's talk about little you. Where are you currently? And let's talk about little you.
Well, I'm currently in Boston. I've been here now for the better part of my life, but I'm originally from the South Jersey area. But came up to Boston to go to school, actually, at Boston University, and really just fell in love with the city. And I've really been up here ever since. Background-wise, my background is very diverse, both professionally and personally. So, it's kind of like, how long do you have to kind of go into everything?
Well, this is the fun part about a long-form conversation. We have some time, so
okay,
this is good.
Okay, good. So on the personal side, my interests are super diverse, and it's interesting. So what you can find me doing really depends on the time of the year. So in the summer, I'm really into sailing, specifically competitive sailing, which is one of the reasons I actually came up to Boston and went to BU, is because I wanted to sail competitively on their team there. They sail on the Charles. So in the summertime, really like sailing, like competing specifically. In the winter, I'm a huge skier, so love to ski not only here in New England, but to really travel around the world. So I've been everywhere from Europe to South America to British Columbia to the west coast of the U.S., like kind of everywhere, Japan, skiing. So kind of really depends on what time of the year it is. And then my most recent kind of hobby that I've taken up as actually, let's see, about 4.5, 5 years ago, I ended up getting my private pilot's license. And so now, depending on weather and kind of conditions here in New England, you can find me kind of buzzing around and going flying. So it's kind of, like I said, all over the place, very diverse in terms of like what my interests are, non-professionally, just kind of personally for fun.
Well, wait a second, wait. Let's talk real back, all right? So I love how you went right to college, but I'm like, that's not little you. So just saying. So how did the Jersey kid, all right, so you're a Jersey kid and you're into, all right, the older you flying, okay, I get that. But Jersey kid, we're sailing. I mean, because when people think Jersey, no, I mean, no exaggeration. When people think of Jersey, they think about Jersey Shore, not a problem. They think about, I mean, like every little TV show that you've ever seen, that people have their mindset. When they think about the bridge, how much, I mean, honest to goodness, how much it costs just to get to Jersey from New York is not even right. I mean, whenever, I mean, because now it's not like you're going through a toll, you're going in, it's just going through your fast pass. Right. And I get the invoice and I'm like, what are you talking about? That's the most insane price for a toll.
Right.
So how did the Jersey kid get into sailing and skiing?
Yeah. So that's actually a really funny story. So I grew up at the Jersey Shore in Wildwood. So it's a beach town almost as far south as you can go in New Jersey before you fall into the Delaware Bay. And would spend every summer there. And when I was about 7 or 8, I was literally driving my parents crazy. Like little Arian was just rambunctious, too much energy. And there was a club at the end of our street that was advertising sailing lessons. And my parents were like, it's 3 blocks away. We're putting you in sailing lessons to just take up some of your time to like get your energy out. And they like walked me down to the end, like, 3 blocks away, and put me in sailing lessons, and I ended up loving it. So it's kind of stemmed from my parents just kind of wanted to get me out of their hair initially. And then I really got into the competitive aspect of it, and just really liked sailing and specifically racing. And so my parents kind of saw that kind of passion in me. They kind of, stoked the flames a little bit. And then I started traveling up and down the East Coast, little 8-9-year-old Arian, racing at different locations, all up and down the East Coast. And so that's kind of what got me into it. And that's kind of what, where the passion stemmed from. And then actually, it's a funny story. So we know each other from Mass Challenge because I had started a company called Coachup. And one of the big reasons why I was so passionate about that is because I lived the story of my parents trying to help me out and figure out how to get me better at sailing. And they, Coachup was essentially a marketplace that connected athletes and private coaches in a bunch of different sports. But had it existed when I was, 9 years old, they totally would have been a customer. But I saw the pain points that they went through trying to, find a professional coach or even find just like a college coach to come down on the weekends and, give me some pointers to help me out. So, so that's kind of the sailing story.
Well, what I was gonna say, are your parents, I mean, obviously your parents put you into this, but are your parents involved in sports at all?
No. So that's like the really funny sport. The thing about my life is everything that I do, my parents have never done before. They have no interest in, they were not boat people, period, let alone sailors. They know nothing about the sport. Same thing with skiing. They're not skiers. They're not interested in the sport. Definitely not pilots. So, it's kind of one of those things that all of my interests are things that I kind of gravitated to just because I was interested in it. And I'm sure I drove my parents crazy because they're like, what is this that you want to do? You want to do what? Okay.
This is where we are very similar. I mean, I'm first generation, born from Haiti, conceived in Haiti, born in America. And my dad was always like, if I work so hard to come to this country, you should have every opportunity in the world to do everything. So I remember in high school, he got me the skis. I'm like, I want to join the ski club. Got me the skis, got me everything like that. And I mean, I was loving it. And he's like, I'm like, do you not want to be involved? He's like, because we're from the Caribbean. We don't do
right.
Like, I mean, it's just like, I go, what was that movie? The Jamaican bobsled team.
Yeah.
It was the same exact way where I go,
no, what? Yeah.
It's not what we do. And for all the things that I love doing, they were like, I have no interest. The only thing that they do love, well, my dad, my grandmother, was the beach. Was in Haiti, beautiful beaches, although people just are not aware about that. My mother spent every single weekend at the beach when she was younger, despises the beach. She hates the sand, she hates everything about it.
Okay.
And I'm like, I go, how weird are you? But it is one of those moments where your parents push you to do things and you're like, here, I will support whatever you're going to do as long as you get out of the way. And like you, I'm a little hyper. I'm a little high energy as well. And they're like, how many more things can we put her in? Yep. All right. So skiing, same thing where clearly I'm assuming they had no interest in that.
No interest in skiing. So I was actually even younger when I got into skiing. So I think I was in kindergarten. So maybe 5 years old, 6 years old. And as my mom tells me, I'm literally sitting watching the Winter Olympics on TV, and I'm watching skiing, and I'm like, this is like the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. I want to do this. How do I do this? Take me to do this. And I just once I saw it, I was just hooked, and I wouldn't stop talking about it. And so finally, let's go see if he's skiing. And so they took 6-year-old Arian and put him in ski wee. Keep in mind, this is in New Jersey, so we went to the Poconos. It's not like we have giant mountains. They're glorified hills with some man-made snow on it. So went to the Poconos, put me in ski wee program, and just loved it. And I think one of the big reasons why I loved it is because I learned at such a young age that I don't remember the trials and tribulations of learning how to ski, because for all I know, I've kind of known how to do it for as long as I can remember. So, and it's always been fun, always been a blast. But my parents, I know, they would take me every weekend in the winter growing up. And the moment that my dad was confident that I could get myself around on the mountain and I would be fine and I would be safe, that was it. He no longer was skiing, because he got into it just to help me out, to make sure that, all right, I have this 6-year-old kid that's kind of going around by himself. I need to keep an eye on him, But once I got to a point, after like a couple years that he was like
Uh-huh.
convinced that I was safe and I was probably at that point a better skier than he was. He was
Uh-huh.
like, "Great, you go do your thing. I'm gonna be in the lodge. Like, fine." Um, so again, like my parents knew nothing about it.
Uh-huh.
Ended up getting into it a little bit just to kind of make sure I was safe. But once they could kind of take the reins off and just let me go, they were like, "Okay, you're good."
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so clearly you are a you can create happiness from certain things. Like you see it, you create the happiness, and you're like, I'm gonna own this. I'm gonna like make sure that I'm excelling at this. But were you like this in school?
Um, I don't think I was like necessarily like that in school. I was like that for specific subjects in school. I
Mhm.
definitely had my favorite subject that I enjoyed, and I had subject that I didn't enjoy. And very quickly, I kind of noticed that trait in myself. That things that I was really passionate about, I was like really all in, and things
Mhm.
that I didn't, I was like, this is like really, it's like pulling teeth, trying to like motivate myself do this. So, the things that I was really passionate about, I was always really into like math and science. I loved physics, was a big fan of physics.
Mhm.
But then all the, like writing and English and history, like that wasn't really, those weren't really my subjects.
Yep.
Um, and so that's just kind of like how my personality is. However, as I have gotten older, I've kind of like started developing an appreciation of those things that if you had circled back to me 30 years ago, I would have been like, no way, like get out of here. I don't talk to me about like history. Like I hate reading and like all this stuff. But totally, I've kind of like done a 180 on those things now.
What was your major in college?
So I was a computer science major in college. So I came into BU as a computer science major, and my goal was, I knew that I enjoyed programming, I enjoyed working with computers. I kind of thought like, all right, well, moving forward, I really feel like this is kind of the future. Computers really run the world. So
Mhm.
I want to at least know about them, but I wasn't 100% convinced that that was like it for me. And so one of the reasons actually that I went to BU is because it's such a big school with a huge diverse array of majors that I kind of had that safety net. And that was my thought of like, I think this is what I want to do. I'm interested in this, but if it's not, I want to have enough of a, kind of second choice, enough of a
Mhm.
menu that I would feel confident. But I stuck with it. So I graduated with a computer science degree.
Well, I was going to ask you in regards of, I mean, at the start when you first went in, what was your thought of like what you were going to do with it? I mean, like computer science, and again, at the time when you were taking computer science, yes, it is part of the world, but we had no idea the evolution of what it is now compared to when
Right.
you went to school. But what was your thought where I'm going into it, but you're going to graduate? What were you going to do with
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't know. I had no idea. So actually, it's funny that you asked that because while I was in school, I actually did as much as I could to figure out what I actually wanted to take and do with it. So while
it?
I was in school, I did a couple of different internships, actually working in the industry to figure out like what I should do and where I should go. When actually my entire senior year, I was only a part-time student, and I was working part-time for EMC Corporation out in
Mhm.
Hopkinton. Uh, and that was really instrumental for me in a couple of different ways. So one, I was just searching to see like, is this something that I want to do?
Mhm.
But it gave me the first chance to actually see what a huge multi-billion-dollar corporation, how it operated from the inside. And it was kind of, looking forward, it was really instrumental and super helpful because when you build a business, you have to know eventually where you want to get to, if you want to, get there. And so
Mhm.
it was really key for me to see, okay, this is how a billion-dollar company operates, and here's the systems and processes in place. Here are the various roles and like how people interact. So that was good. But then on the flip side, it also made me realize that I did not want to work for like a 10,000 plus person company, because especially not right out of school, because it was
Mhm.
just too big. You kind of get pigeonholed into like your specific role, and there's not really a lot of opportunity to branch out.
Mhm.
So to kind of answer your question, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I started trying to go out and actually get some experience, and from that kind of steered me to like what I ultimately ended up doing, which was I graduated. I took a smaller a role at a smaller company, 30-ish person company, it was a financial software company, where I got to branch out a little bit more, experience a lot more of the different aspects of the business. Was still using my computer science degree, so I was still very much coding and building and everything. But you got to own a lot more of the process, and so that's kind of really where it really helped me figure out what I wanted to do.
Now you went from EMC, still in school, smaller company, financial. When did you go to, like, what happened next? So walk me through what happened next to the point of where you are right now.
Okay. So after the experience at EMC, and I realized I don't want to work for this huge company. When I graduated, I took a role at this company called Brokerage, which is a financial software company. It was an automated broker dealer. I knew nothing about the financial industry, nothing about trading, nothing about Wall Street. So that was fun to kind of get that piece of knowledge in, because we were basically creating high-speed trading systems for algo traders. So that was really fun. I was there for about 3 years. I got to build an entire product from the ground up, from everything. I did everything from interfacing and talking with potential customers to speccing out the entire project, to actually building and implementing it myself and then launching it, which was really fun. So that was a great experience. And then I was at Lime for about 3 years, and we ended up getting acquired by a West Coast security firm called Webbush. And that was kind of the first, I had always been kind of entrepreneurial, and I knew at some point I wanted to kind of do my own thing and start my own business. Wasn't really sure what that was going to, be, or what it was going to look like. But seeing and going through from the inside, that kind of transition and that acquisition, that's kind of gave me the first kind of sense of, all right, this is something I really want to do. Because I saw that the folks who had started the company and founded the company, 10 years ago, a decade prior to the acquisition, they were really excited because they spent 10 years of their life building this thing, and they had a great outcome, and it was just a fantastic experience. And I was like, like I really like that. Like, I want to be on that side at one point, because obviously I wasn't an owner or founder. So that kind of gave me the first taste of that kind of sense of this is something I want to do at some point. So it was kind of right around then, I really, from that experience, started getting very involved in the Boston ecosystem, the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I started going to a lot of meetups. I started going to a lot of, group meetings. There's no shortage of meetups in the Boston area. So through that, I basically got connected to a bunch of folks, but eventually, just through a friend of a friend, kind of mutual acquaintance, got introduced to my buddy Jordan Fleegle, who eventually became a co-founder at Coachup. And when I got connected to him, it was kind of under the premise of, hey, I'm interested in starting a business. Here's my skill set. It's kind of technical. I'm looking for a way to get involved, and I'm really interested in starting a business. And then through a friend of a friend, he introduced me to Jordan, who's like, oh, well, like, I have this person that you probably want to talk to, because he's got like the opposite skill set of you, has an idea for a business, but it's kind of just in its infancy. And so I connected with him, and that was the idea for Coachup, which we talked a little bit about before, the two-sided marketplace connecting athletes and private coaches. And so started doing essentially nights and weekends. This was when I was still at Lime, building the first version of Coachup. And basically we had this agreement where if we got to an MVP, launched it, and got a certain number of users using it, I was like, I want to dive in and do this full time. So that's what I did. Built the business, got our first coaches and athletes on the platform using it, and then dove in full time from there. And then that was a really fun journey. So I was at Coachup for 5 years, a little bit more than 5 years, and ran the full gamut. So I did everything from, I was hands-on keyboard coding, building V1, to eventually, as we were going through the life cycle of the company and kind of progressing, as we were able to raise some angel money and then some eventual venture capital money. My role kind of shifted from individual contributor to really like recruiter and like team builder, and then spent a couple years like running the team, specifically the engineering team. So I was the CTO there. And then when we got to, we grew big enough, we were going for our Series B. Eventually, we actually recruited an entire executive management team. So we actually brought in a professional CEO. We brought in a professional CTO, and kind of like replaced myself and replaced my co-founder to kind of continue growing the business and kind of get it to the next level. And so that was kind of the journey with Coachup. And by the way, the company's still around, still doing great.
Well, I was going to say, sidebar. So I live in Marblehead, and one of your coaches helped me for when I ran the 2004 marathon. I hired one of your coaches, and we would meet at Salem's. I mean, I would like take a jog to Salem State, 4 miles from my door, train, and then run back. So it was awesome.
Perfect. That's awesome.
Just want to say I used your product. I really liked it. There you go. So the thing is, I didn't even know if it was still around.
Yeah, it's still around, still growing. Just myself and Jordan, we're not there anymore. So after we kind of like replaced ourselves, I spent a little bit more time there, but really from there, I kind of like same thing, turned the reins over and left it under a capable team. And then, both of us were kind of like, all right, well, what do we want to do next? And so that's kind of what led me to what I'm doing now at IgnitePOST. And so that was kind of the transition there. I took a little bit of time off after Coachup just to chill for a couple months. And then, there's a couple of ideas that I was kicking around, but IgnitePOST was really the one that I was the most excited about, most passionate about. And so that gave me the opportunity and time and kind of space to really focus and work on that. And so that's kind of how I made the transition to where I am right now.
So where did this idea come from? Because I remember when we first talked, when you first started it, and I was like, you know what? I go, it makes sense. It makes sense on many levels. So I was like always taught when I was younger, every single situation you write thank you notes. Thank you notes. It is by far the most needed thing to say thank you for something. Electronics has made it so watered down where whenever I get a thank you online or a text, I'm like, what? You couldn't make an effort? I'm trying to keep the post office in business. Come on now.
Right.
But also when I receive a handwritten note from a young person, I automatically go to your parents raised you well. Automatically. I'm like, I go, holy crap, someone in your life really put in that whole entire skill set of taking note of what the person said, but also writing a note. But now you're mass producing it. And you have mentioned where in essence, like a constant contact, where there's a part of me that I'm like, how do I make this? How do I love this when I get it, but how do I like it? So explain where did it come from? Why is it needed? There's a part, that I know the answer, but I want to hear from you. Why is it needed now? And and how do you convince people that this is a need to have versus a nice to have?
Yeah. So there's kind of two major trends happening that we see. So the first one is, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit, right now, everybody is very oversaturated with too much digital communication, especially right now, right? We're at the point where I think the last stat that I saw is every email user on the planet gets on average about 120 emails into their inbox every single day. In addition to about 5,000 digital ads that get pushed our way on literally every device that we own. Digital ads, emails, push notifications on tablet, phone, watch now, God forbid. So digitally, we're very oversaturated. And then the second trend that we see is this ushering in of what we like to call it IgnitePOST, the relationship-centric era. So for far too long, and this is kind of the other side of the coin, marketing and sales and everything has all been about the very customer centric, right? A customer comes in and they're essentially treated like a number, like, oh, we've got like a lead, right? And the whole idea was you hit the customer with as many touch points as you possibly can until they ended up signing up or crying uncle or purchasing your service. So the idea is that in the more of the relationship centric era that we're moving into, that we can't keep doing that, right? It's hard for me to imagine, a decade into the future where the solution of like how everybody is buying and the experience everybody gets is, well, we're sending you about 120 emails a day right now. Let's crank that up to like 500, right? Like that doesn't, it seems like a race to the bottom. I can't see that being the thing. And so the whole idea behind the relationship centric era is that it's going to become more and more important for businesses and brands to actually develop a relationship with their customers, but do so at scale, right? We're at this point now where everybody wants to be treated like a VIP, right? Everybody wants that white glove treatment, and brands want to deliver, right? Because now that the power has like shifted to the customer, right? If they don't have that good experience, if you don't give them that, VIP white glove treatment, will go and they'll like leave you a bad review, God forbid, or they'll complain publicly, or there's a lot more of a downside now. So the kind of need that you were talking to a little bit kind of stems from that, where businesses are losing the ability to communicate effectively in the way in which they need to kind of develop that relationship with their customers and prospects, but they still need the ability to do it in a scalable way. So that's kind of what we did. It was kind of like took the two and kind of put them together and said, okay, well, businesses need to change the way they're doing things. They can't do what they're doing right now. So we know that something like a personalized handwritten note works well. How can we deliver this in an authentic way that's scalable, that it's not the mass-produced direct mail kind of junk mail aspect? And so that's kind of where we fit in, and kind of where we play. And actually, I don't call our product direct mail because it's not. It takes a lot more time and effort to actually make. And if you actually pick up one of our notes and hold it in your hand, it is a real penned note, and we can actually mimic and duplicate your actual handwriting. So it doesn't play in that direct mail space that something like 20-30% of junk direct mail gets thrown away as junk mail. So it doesn't play in that space. We're above that, but we're basically giving businesses the ability to communicate in an authentic way, but still scale it.
Are we? So I mean, so I'm using the products. So am I writing something first? That way you understand my writing. And how do you keep us safe? Because this is so cool, but then what if someone forges your signature? I mean, we live in a world where technology, we get hacked all the time, but your signature, your fingerprints they're designed to you. You see in court cases all the time where I go, they bring in a specialist. Could a specialist tell the difference in regards to what you're doing? What's the safety aspect? And also, does it get so close to what I'm actually writing? Ooh, three questions right there.
So one, a specialist can definitely tell, like, okay, this is robotically written versus someone actually sat down and did this. But to an untrained eye, no. Like you or I would not be able to sit down and say this is fake and this is not. Someone who does this for a living probably could. They definitely could. So that's number one. Number two, we actually don't do signatures specifically for the reasons that you brought up, because it's a gray area. There's too much, there's too much liability. So we don't duplicate people's signatures, but we can duplicate someone's handwriting style. So if you wanted to put your handwriting style on file with us, we could do that. Essentially, that process works as we send you a sheet that you print out and essentially give us a sample. So you write out all the letters, all the symbols, numbers, and then some phrases, because what we do is we actually introduce what's called penmanship variation into the handwriting. So when you're writing a paragraph, when you're writing a paragraph, nobody writes the same two letters exactly the same, especially if there are certain characters that appear together. So like if you have like a double T in a name or something, a lot of people have their own cadence and their own style of writing popular letter combinations. So we kind of capture that because we make you write out some sentences and phrases and paragraphs, and we actually introduce that into the writing. So it's not a font. It literally is a handwriting style. So that's what we do. If you want to duplicate your own handwriting, you don't have to do this. So if you wanted to use our service, you can just log on, create an account. You can type up the message that you want to send. And then we have a menu of 7 different handwriting styles, soon to be 10 different handwriting styles that you can just choose by default. So you don't have to go through the process of putting your own handwriting on file with us. But you also don't have to handwrite out every note. So you can type the note that you want, select the handwriting style that you want to use, and then we do everything else for you. So we have a fleet of robots that holds real ballpoint pens and will write out your message according to.
That's crazy.
And we do all of the fulfillment and packing and shipping and everything for you. So you basically use us like your favorite marketing program, and then we do all of the work on our end.
Again, so the last question that you didn't ask, why did you get into this? Because one, it's wild. Like the only thing that I can think that's like so close to this is like Archaic Mosaic, which is another mass challenge company that was like years ago, and they basically changed up the whole entire mosaic community by creating robots that would hand place. Like, so I design whatever I want, and it literally I've watched this robot place each one, where for a human it's time consuming, For a robot, it's done very quickly.
Yep.
So now you've created robots to do the same exact thing. Why? I mean, again, why now? Like, why now?
Yeah. So again, it kind of goes back to the whole idea of this relationship-centric era that's kind of being ushered in. So for me, honestly, the thing that did it is human DNA and like how we're built. Humans, if you kind of like dial it all the way back to like early human civilization, humans learn about their environment by touching it and interacting with it, right? It's like built into our reptilian brains of like how we've evolved over time. So when we were thinking about, how do we really personalize things in this kind of new relationship, era, the way to do it is to unlock subconsciously how people feel about the correspondence they get from you. And the only way to do that is to one, send them something physical, two, make sure it's personalized, and three, make sure that there is some essence of the sender in there, right? So the kind of trifecta that hit all three was being able to send a very personalized handwritten note, because when you get it, it unlocks all of those things. It's tactile, so you can hold it and see it and feel it. But then the inscription that's on it has a little bit of that person, it's kind of like comes through in the message. And there's a lot of studies on this. Like, don't take my word for this. There's been a lot of studies about how things like that subconsciously connect with the recipient, which makes them more likely to kind of create this subconscious connection with the sender, which then also makes them more likely to, give your correspondence a higher ranking in their mind than everything else that they've seen. Certainly more so than, digital and email and digital ads, but even more so than just like the kind of generic junk mail that we're used to getting all the time.
One of my besties, and as well as my mom and my bestie Christina, they keep Hallmark in business. Like, I mean, literally, my mother, everyone knows my mom for the fact that she doesn't miss a birthday, she doesn't miss an anniversary, she doesn't miss, and she's like always at the card store. It's amazing. My girlfriend Christina, as I've told, she will send me a thank you card for everything, or a birthday card or a Halloween card. I mean, like literally random, like St. Patrick's Day card. I'm like, dude, stop it. I was just with you. Did you just have it in your car and did you mail it as you walked away from me? It is so funny. It's become this joke where even when she introduces me to people, the first thing I start with is, hey, how'd you like Christina's card? And they're like, oh my God. And they lose their minds. So it really does. It definitely stirs up conversation, gets people really excited. And so it's a winner. But now, so how many people are on your team?
So we have a 4-person team right now.
4-person team.
Yeah.
March 2020. We're all excited. We're all getting our cards. We're all excited about the new year, 2020. Yay! And then people start talking about toilet paper and things start shutting down. The world is, in our lifetime, we've never seen this. The world has now been affected by the same exact thing. You are a startup. You are a small business. What was it like for you on March 2020, and how has it been full circle in the time that has lapsed since that time?
Yeah, it was tough. So, kind of how it affected us as a business, it's both ways. So both negatively and positively. So on the negative side, if we were having this conversation, prior to the whole pandemic, I would have told you that our kind of number one customers are sales teams, right? Specifically like enterprise sales teams that are using us to kind of get their foot in the door and prospect and kind of get people to give them the time of day, really kind of cut through the noise. And when, March 2020 hit and the world kind of shut down, everybody started working from home, we actually saw probably 70% of our business just kind of evaporate within the span of about 2 weeks, because that was our biggest constituent. And now with everybody working at home, we had this giant friction point of like, well, we no longer know where anybody is, because before we knew where the companies were, we knew where the business headquarters were, but we have no idea where the people that we're trying to reach live. That information, like, we don't have. So we saw about 70% of our business kind of evaporate in that month. So we did a lot of scrambling to kind of figure out.
I'm going to stop you for 70%. It's a big number. It's a big number. It's a huge number. How are you? You've had you've definitely had another startup before. And you are now trying to figure out how to navigate this whole entire essence of, is my business going to shut down or not? So 70%, what is, I mean, this is your second business and you're like, I'm an entrepreneur, I can figure this out, but you have a team. How are you reassuring the team while trying to keep the business afloat during this time that's historically epic?
Yeah. Well, so I think the historically epic thing helped a lot, right? Where they're like, okay, this is not just like a thing that happened, like everybody's in the same boat. So one, that helped a lot. Two, it was just transparency, right? It was like being level with everybody because we're a small team. We know each other very well. So it was just being level, like, listen, we had 70% of our business that we're relying on is like, we can't rely on it anymore. We need to pivot and figure out where we're going next. And we literally got together and made a list of like, here are all of the markets that were showing promise. Here are all of the issues and problems that were arising with our current focus, which was the sales market. What are the things that are out there that we're already in that don't have these problems that we can kind of pivot and go after? And that's literally what we did. So we actually pivoted, and now the majority of our business actually comes from the e-commerce space. And the reason why we did that is, one, we were working with some e-commerce companies. So again, people will make a purchase and they want to, reach out to get a review or a testimonial or something. So that kind of like use case there. But the most important dynamic we saw is that the whole, I don't know where this person lives, evaporates and goes away. So typically in the e-commerce space, you know who your customers are, you know where they live because they've made a purchase from you, and you actually have to ship a thing to them, like a widget to them. So all of that, the initial problems that we have went away. So we said, aha, we know that this is a great space. We already have customers. We have some good success stories, and we know that that friction point is not there. So as a business, we fully shifted and we said, this is it for the next couple of months, 100% all in. We're just going to build our business by focusing on this vertical. And that's what we did. And so within probably like 4 or 5 months, we had built back to the point that we were prior to March, and just filled that giant chasm with revenue from just a different revenue stream, different vertical, knowing that at some point, like, the world will reopen and we will go back and we'll be able to still go after the sales vertical. But for now, it's like we had to save the business. It's like, here, this is it. This is where we have to go.
But wait a second.
So it's just focus.
But wait a second. The world closed down. The salespeople did not. So why were you not able to engage with the sales teams? Because those big companies, they didn't shut down. I mean, they shut down as in like, yes, I get to work at home. And a lot of them are not. A lot of them are realizing, hey, that brick and mortar that I've been paying for quite some time, there's no need for that. So, and my employees are working harder and better because now, like, look, I'm on this call and I can run to the bathroom and I can like roast a chicken and I can come back to the computer and be on my meeting. So a lot of people they're happier being at home, and salespeople are pretty much living in their cars. So how are you justifying to me where the sales team, when the sales teams could be anywhere, but more so now they're gonna be at home in a lot of companies. So that problem that you're saying, the world is opening up, but the problem is still there.
It's still there to some degree. I don't think everybody is going to be fully remote. At some point, people are going to come back to the office. I don't think it's going to be 100%. I think there's going to be a lot of companies that just stay fully remote, which is fine. But I think a huge portion of them are going to come back to like an actual brick and mortar. So when that happens, we'll definitely go back and kind of attack that market. But on the flip side of that is the friction point was just too much for us to overcome in the short period of time that we had. We didn't really have time for it, right? And we still don't have a great solution of, all right, well, if I'm trying to target folks at this company and they're living everywhere, we don't know where they live. We just know that they work for this company.
Right.
How do we kind of get that information? That friction point is still there, and is why we decided to, for now, pivot away. Okay. So, we're, like I said, we'll come back to that at some point, but for right now, we're really focused on the e-commerce space because it doesn't exist, and it's just allowing us to build and grow that. We can build a nice business just focused on that vertical alone. So when the others come back, I'll be excited.
Where do you feel that the industry will go from here? I mean, so you have all these statistics. They're scary, but they're true. And this is, and what you've created is it literally it's good jujus. It's good jujus. Right. It makes people happy. It really is. Snail mail makes me super jazzed, where I get excited for my birthday. I get excited for Christmas. mean, like that real tangible snail mail. And as much as I make fun of my girlfriend, Christina, I do love it when I get her cards. So where do we go from here? People are now, at the beginning of the pandemic, I was queen of unsubscribing, things that I had subscribed for that I had no idea. And I'm like, and your name is out there somewhere in the land of like cyber. And thank God we had this happen, because for me, I unsubscribed from a boatload of things. So we are now fatigued. We are tired of this. We want to get back to the old, what's old is new. So where do you see the future going? Because now old is new, but AI is involved in this. So what's happening in your, because you're in this, you're a coder, you're a designer. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so I think if the quarantines and everything has taught us anything, I think it's a little bit easier to have these conversations now and kind of convince people that it's important to actually establish like a rapport and build like a real relationship with folks. If it's taught us anything, it's that, throwing lots of Zoom calls up, even though you can kind of see people, it doesn't satisfy that like innate human need. Right. And I think actually it's now easier for people to see that because they've lived it. Right. They're like, well, you got to live the, isolation, and the only form of connection that you have with loved ones, other, coworkers and colleagues is digital. Like, how does that make you feel? And so now the conversation is actually easier because people realize that it doesn't do it. Like it feels like there's a missing piece to like our human experience. So if anything, I think that the conversations have gotten easier, and that people are going to realize, all right, we need to do more than just throw lots of digital anything towards people, and that it's an important part of like the human experience to kind of like build and grow and have an interaction. And so I think that's kind of what we're going to see. We're going to see, like, certainly I hope we see more stuff like mail being sent. But I think you're going to see a lot of, in total, just a more of a concerted effort to satisfy that human, connection piece, or that need for a human interaction, like that's not through a digital screen.
You've had 2 businesses. You've worked for corporate. You've worked for small. There are so many people that are working. Or got furloughed, or got laid off, or graduated from school and walked out of this, like where I am walking into a pandemic. What advice would you give to anyone that's listening to you in regards to, I want to start something. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to start. I'm getting paid by another company, but I'm really not happy there because I'm going to have to go back to the micromanager that's been on my back. And now I'm happy being home, but I've been researching out that thing that I'm passionate for. What would you say to that person? Because you've gone through all of these different ways of seeing how businesses are run and how you played the role. What would be your thought to anyone that's listening?
Well, my initial thought would be that there's never a right time to go and start a business ever. If you're waiting for like the right moment or like the right timing, it's never going to happen. So my first advice is, don't wait for that moment. Just wherever you are right now, like start where you stand and just start making progress. So that's kind of the first thing. And then even if you do think it's the right time, things like pandemics and stuff hit. So you can never foresee what's happening anyway. So that's number one. And then the second thing is just figure out what like success and assumptions, look like to you. Like, what does success look like? What are your assumptions? And just figure out how to start making some progress, right? Business is very much about making progress and just kind of getting from point A to point B. And it doesn't really matter how you do that. It's just the momentum builds on itself. So whatever you need to do to get yourself from where you are now to either validate or invalidate your kind of first couple assumptions, start where you stand and just start making taking those steps and making progress. And kind of rest will kind of illuminate as you go. But that's kind of the biggest learning I have, is there's no secret. Like, you don't see the whole journey at the beginning and then you're like, oh, there's the whole journey, I'm going to take step 1, step 2. It's like, well, here are a couple things that I think are true. Let's go and actually validate them. And you just kind of take sequential steps. It's 1,000 tiny steps, not like 1 or 2 giant leaps.
Who's your best customer?
I don't know if I'm allowed to actually say who our best customer is, but our best customer is a West Coast company that actually uses our technology to reach out on behalf of their customers in a customer support type of way. I can't I can't disclose who they are, but
well, no.
it's actually.
And the funny thing is, I asked the question, but you're not answering it right. But it's like funny. I was gonna go. I don't want to interrupt you. Who is the best customer that you want to get? Like if you're talking to the universe, who is your best customer?
Yeah. So our best customers are e-commerce shops who sell some type of product that tends to have an average sale price of $100 or more. So if you are selling a product or service that kind of fits that category, we can help you out in a variety of different ways. So anybody that's looking to, one, establish a deeper relationship with their existing customers, to turn their existing customers into raving fans, which is becoming more. If you really look specifically the number of reviews or testimonials that you have, that's a kind of a great use case too. So anyone that sells a product or service online, looking to deepen that relationship, looking to grow the number of reviews or testimonials and turn their customers into raving fans, we can help you with just a couple clicks.
What about regular people? I mean, like, can a regular person use your services too, or is it just primarily for businesses?
Nope. So we're focused on the B2B market, but we definitely have individuals that just kind of come and sign up. The way that our service works, you can come and send 2,000 handwritten notes, or you can send one. So and anywhere in between. So we can definitely help individuals out if they just want to come and send one or two notes for sure. That's no problem.
What do your parents think of you now? High energy. You're really just out of control every which way. And literally, once you found something you love, they're like, whew, hands off on him for now until the next thing. But now you're adult, you're fully hands-on. But what do you think? What are their thoughts about the evolution of everything that you've done? And then this is your second company. So are they just like baffled, or
they think I'm crazy. Yeah. And it's interesting because both my parents kind of view it from different ways. So my dad actually he's kind of got the entrepreneurial bug as well. So he started a business, ran it for about 15 years, and then ended up selling it and retiring. And when I first told him that I was going to leave my job at Lime to go do this startup Coachup, he was like, Arian, you're crazy. Like, I've done this before. You don't want to do this. Knock it off. Like, just go get like a nice job somewhere. Maybe you can climb the corporate ladder. So he was very much like poo-pooed it. He's like, no, like, what are you doing? You're crazy. Like, you don't want to do this. My mom, on the other hand, same thing. So for like the first business, she was like, yeah, like, I really don't think this is a good idea. Like, you're like, 2 or 3 years out of college. Like, no, like, just go get can't you just go get a nice job somewhere? But then, so after the first business, then their tune kind of changed a little bit, and they kind of realized, okay, this is something that he really enjoys doing. So like, my dad is still like, when are you just gonna go and just go get a real job, right? Like, don't do this, like, starting a business. It's a headache. You don't want to do this, because he's lived it. He lived it for 15 years. Yep. And then, but my mom now she's come around. She's like, great, like, I know you like doing it. I'll support you no matter what. Like, how are things going? So two completely different viewpoints.
I love it. I think it's funny because your dad was an entrepreneur. You clearly, it was there in you, but even just the high energy of who you are. But I think it's funny how your dad's like move away from it, because most parents that are in it, you're watching them, so you're basically like, they're your best educator in the field, and you saw how hard they worked, and yet you still went that route. And for him to say, it's like the doctor saying, I don't want my kids to be doctors. Like, I'm like, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. I mean, you're never home. Yeah. All right. So this went by really, really faster than I thought. Like, in my mind, as I'm talking to you, it's just like I'm talking to you like normal. And then I look at the clock and I'm like, oh my God, this went by so quickly. It's crazy. All right. So it leads to my last question, but this isn't the last time. So I tell everybody, so before I used to say, I'll check back with you at the end of the year, thinking that we were going to be out of a pandemic. So I thought the pandemic was going to be like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Yep.
A little bit longer than we thought. So I'm just like, and a lot of people just ask me, can I keep this going? And as a former TV and radio producer, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of work on the back end, but on the front end, it's so much fun because I'm talking to you guys, and you guys, I know you, but I don't know you. Like I've said this to everyone, it's shocking how I've spent time with so many people. Even like, I mean, I've had my best friend on this, I've had relatives on this, and I'm like, how come I didn't know this? Like, what? This is crazy. Because when we're together, we don't talk about our personals. So I thank you very, very much. But I have 2 more questions for you. Sure. This is the way I end every single conversation. And when you come back, you'll always know this is always the way that I'll end this conversation. So if you had a personal ask and a professional ask of anyone that's listening right now, so two answers, a professional ask and a personal ask, what would be your ask?
Okay. Well, on the professional side, if you run an online store or know someone that does, I would love to connect and chat with them. I always love, one, seeing the various use cases for our service and product that we can set up. And especially like now coming out of the pandemic, we'd love to, if I get a warm intro, help somebody, throw them some free credits and get them set up on IgnitePOST and see if we can make them successful and hit their goals. So that's kind of a professional ask. I think on the personal side, actually, an interesting thing that happened during the pandemic is because the restaurants were closed and couldn't go out, I spent a lot of time trying to kind of cultivate healthier habits. So one of the things that I've done is shifted to a entirely plant-based diet. So if you know or have any good plant-based or vegetarian meals or suggestions or recipes, I would love to talk more.
All right, well, now I'm gonna have to ask about that one. So no, as a Caribbean kid, we don't waste the meat. I mean, so we eat meat and we use, so when I go to Haiti, we, in advance, we order cows, goats, chickens, and they're in the backyards and everything is used, like everything is used. So when people are like, I go, oh my God, I'm vegetarian. I'm like, oh, that's lovely. I love meat. But I was raised with the fact that even when we were here, my mother would get paid once a month and she'd go to the butcher, she'd order the meat and he would cut it up and we'd have the entire cow cut up in the freezer. So plant-based, because of when you say plant-based and you say the word healthy, in my mind, I'm like, if you're buying your meat in the proper place, it's healthy. So why did you go that route and why? I mean, I just want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So number one, I love meat. I was the same way. Like I ate meat all the time, every day. It was kind of like just kind of a challenge for myself of like, all right, can I eat closer to the earth? Can I put healthier things in my body? And even now, like I'd say I'm 90% plant-based, but there's still times where I'm like, I want to go eat a steak right now. Yeah. So I'm not like 100% like in that bucket, but I would say I made the shift because I wanted the majority of my diet to be closer to the earth and just kind of, eating how kind of going back to like early humans of like how like what our diets were. Early humans' diets were primarily vegetarian. And so I was like, all right, I have the time now. Restaurants are closed down. So if I'm gonna like make this change and kind of see how I feel, now's the time to do it. So that was kind of my thought process.
And you're like, and that was it. Okay, all right. I thought there was more.
No. I mean, and then I did some research about how like it's better for like your internals and like your veins and your arteries to have a majority of your diet coming from plants versus meat, and kind of there's a lot of kind of health benefits I was reading about. But I was like, well, we'll see. This is the time to do it. So I'll see the next time I go to the doctors where my numbers are and how things have been working.
Well, I was gonna say that I like when I was in the media, we did an entire story on the blue zone, and I was fascinated with them. And they were like, your meat should be the size of this. Like this is the amount of meat that you eat per day, and everything else could be on the pastas, but good pastas with the right flour and all the vegetables. So yes, I totally believe that. But they do eat meat every single day. But their quantity of alcohol to meat, they drink more than they actually eat. And they live, the blue zone is all centurions. I mean, they live long for a reason. And the simple thing where they don't go to the gym, but they walk everywhere. Right.
Yep.
So those simple things in life. See, the card writing, the walking, the eating thing. Well, let's go. We're going back to the simple way of life in an AI world. That's all.
Right. Exactly. I couldn't agree more.
Oh my God, Arian, thank you. This was so wonderful.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is a blast. I loved it.
It's, you know, like some people get nervous. They're like, I go, what are we going to talk about? I'm like, I go, we're just talking. I'm not Oprah. I'm giving a lot of like mention to Oprah because I say this all the time. I'm not Oprah, but literally it's just like, I just want to get to know you. If I don't know you, I want to like sit there and like catch up with you if I do know you. So this is awesome in every single way. And I can't wait to sit there and see what else you do.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is a blast. Thanks so much for having me. I had a great time.
Thank you, darling. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
All right. Thank you.